We're live Sunday morning, week 7. Questions. You have them. We're here to answer them. Chris Allen with the medal now. I like that. I didn't know we could add emojis to our little tagline. Sigmund Bloom here, week 7. As always, the chat room is popping, and we appreciate you all. And we're going to try to answer as many questions as we can, and certainly answer these questions in a way that help those of you who don't get a question in, give you some guidance here. Let's go ahead and just get started for the early birds, Chris. Kenneth Kidwell in a half PPR start James Robinson, and this is Jacksonville playing the Giants today, which we would have circled on the calendar before the season. That's a good game for the Jags running backs this week. Drake London against your Cincinnati Bengals. Game script really dependent there. In some ways, if you like London, then you like the Bengals to have a good day today on offense. And TJ Hawkinson. Now we got still a little bit of a skeleton crew with the Lions offense against Dallas. It looks like DeAndre Swift probably not going to go today. DJ Chark was just put on injured reserve. So we've got potentially a tight end over a running back or wide receiver. Robinson, London, or Hawkinson. This one's tough.
I would go with the first and the third. So I would lean more towards James Robinson and TJ Hawkinson, although I think Travis Etienne is the better of the Jacksonville running backs to roster at this point. But I think you alluded to the right point there, Sigmund, by looking at what Detroit is going to be bringing to the table today, because DJ Chark on injured reserve, if I remember correctly, Josh Reynolds still banged up, Amon-Ra also admitting he's not at 100%. So the last time we saw TJ Hawkinson with one of the tight end production days of the ages, I mean, it was in a similar situation, right? Where we knew that they were coming in with a smaller crew. And if we can think about how Dallas has been capable of getting after the quarterback so far, Micah Parsons just playing at on his own level at this point. And if we know anything about Jared Goff, is that if you can get him off of his timing, you can get him off his rhythm, knock him out of the pocket, then we know that he can be. It's just a wild ride. The second that his brain essentially goes berserk. So if there is anybody that's going to be able to take advantage of those types of targets, where Jared Goff has to scramble and his brain short circuits, it's going to be TJ Hawkinson or Amon-Ra St. Brown. So I would lean more towards Hawkinson there. James Robinson, I mean, the workload should be there. The Giants 29th in rush EPA allowed so far through 6 weeks. So at least I lean more towards those two, just because the passing game just hasn't been there for the Falcons right now. 30th in pass rate over expectation so far. And Marcus Mariota has been more known, more so for his rushing at this point, than his passing. So I think at least from a volume standpoint, I would lean more towards the running back and the tight end versus looking at London for this week.
Yeah, and if you had to choose, and I agree with you with London and Atlanta. Again, if Atlanta's competitive, Mariota might only throw the ball 15 times today. And now, if you think that the Bengals will force them to open up the offense, then London becomes a little better play. If you had to, so he's wanting just one. It's between Hawkinson and Robinson. If you can only pick one,
I would lean more towards Robinson.
Robinson's safer.
Yeah, I think it's Robinson. Now, it depends on your matchup though. So if you were playing against let's say I don't know, the Cardinals defense from Thursday night, and you're swinging for the fences.
Eno Benjamin, right?
Yeah, Eno Benjamin, something like that.
Johnson, someone pulled a 2-touchdown.
Right. Then yes, sure. I would lean more towards Hawkinson, but if it's just neutral ground at this point, still 0-0 heading into Sunday afternoon, then I think it would be James Robinson.
Yeah. You just, see if Jacksonville's been a tale 2 seasons, like so many teams. Iron's Cat, what's up, man? See if we get a Justice Hill breakout game today. Standard League. Geno Smith or Derek Carr?
Oh wow, so that's a good one. I don't see the arguments for Derek Carr are pretty solid going up against Houston. But my guess is though that the Chargers are going to be able to push the Seahawks into yet another shootout, and so that's why I lean more towards Geno Smith at this point. Now I know that the Chargers, historically, at least over the past couple of seasons, they've been more of a you can run on them type of defense. So at least it leans more towards Kenneth Walker, and I know that Tyler Lockett's still dealing with his hamstring thing that he's been dealing with over the past couple of weeks too. But again, if this is going to be a matchup where the Chargers are going to be able to get back on like Seahawks defense, as most teams have like throughout the year so far, I mean, it will press Geno like into like that sort of shootout scenario. And also Geno's been running a little bit more over the past couple of weeks.
Sure.
So it's just, I think there can be enough there for it to be for Geno to be the better start over Derek Carr.
Yeah, I would go that way too. Like you said, 6 for 48 for Geno, I think. And really, again, part of, especially with quarterbacks, you're looking at the opponent. Which opponent is likely to push the quarterback and the offense out of their shell? Because both of these offenses, I think, would be fine with giving their running back 25 carries and running the offense through the backfield if they control the game. Who's more likely to control the game? The Raiders against the Texans, which I always feel like I have to say that combo gave us a Brock Osweiler versus Connor Cook playoff game.
That's right.
That was like, did I dream that, or did that actually happen? Or the Chargers and Geno Smith, and I think obviously it's the Chargers here. So in some ways, putting your chip on Geno over Carr is putting a chip on the Chargers offense to do a lot more than the Texans.
A lot of buzz about Josh Jacobs today too, so it just kind of leans more towards it being a rushing day for the Raiders.
Definitely. I mean, look, the last two games going into the bye, Jacobs touched the ball like 25 plus times in both games, and it was a good game in both cases for this team. Okay, we're just going to talk a little Patriots. These aren't necessarily start sits, but we can touch on the Patriots playing tomorrow night. Speaking about rematches of playoff games, rematch of the Super Bowl, Chicago coming to New England. Do you still like Mac Jones Monday night if he starts? And it looks like he's going to start, barring a setback in warmups. And as Robin, and then this is going to lead into a second question. But what do we feel about Mac Jones? Because I don't know about you, Chris. Maybe I just wasn't giving enough respect to the Bill Belichick football encyclopedia. But I really didn't think the Patriots offense was going to be I don't even think they were going to be a top half of the league offense. And it started rough. But now with Bailey Zappi in, it's been one of the better offenses in the league the last few weeks. And now you have Mac Jones. Or should we be changing what we thought of Mac Jones before he got hurt based on what happened while he was hurt?
Yeah, I think so. Because if you think about going into the season, what was it going to be? A Joe Judge, Matt Patricia conglomerate? Like it just sounded bad, like from the onset. And I think with them being able to relatively simplify things like for Zappi and just simplify things for the offense, and also being capable of finding explosives. Like we didn't see like many like just chunk gains like being created like by this Patriots offense through the first like few weeks, but then in the last couple weeks it's been Jacoby Myers like blowing up for like 100-yard games, Tyquan Thornton now becoming one of the hotter like waiver wire ads, Hunter Henry like scampering into the end zone. It's just all these things have now kind of surfaced over the past few weeks, and like while I think that's been great for Bailey Zappi and his long-term value, but it's just the offense in general starting to click better. It's the scheme starting to come together conceptually. So I think I'm not as concerned. I mean, of course, like from a health perspective, like can Mac Jones step into throws and being able to operate in the pocket and just all the things that you would need to do as a quarterback. I think those are fair concerns. But I think if we can get past those, then yeah, I don't have like much concern about Mac Jones like overall, because we know that he's still capable of pushing the ball downfield. He had a deeper average depth of target than Bailey Zappi did. He was still capable of pushing the offense down from a yards per drive perspective. Like they were fairly equal. The things just look more consistent with Zappi because it's just like a point shoot type of quarterback. And that's okay. I mean, if you just want efficiency, if you just want consistency, then that's fine for Zappi. But I think now if we want this offense to actually kind of be more of a, I don't know, like pro style type offense, like quote unquote, then I think Mac Jones is the one that's capable of taking you there. So I think if the health concerns are gone, then I think Mac Jones can be fine. And then for Stevenson, with Harris coming back, it's difficult to trust at this point. Like we know what he can be like with Damian Harris, like at the front of the pack, but it's just, Stevenson should be able to retain most of the passing down work. So that shouldn't be an issue, but it's just once they move into scoring position, we know where Harris kind of resides in the pecking order at that point. So I think unless you're banking on him, just banging in a touchdown at some point, I think Ramondre Stevenson he slides more into that like mid-tier RB2 range, like than anything else.
Yeah, I think that with Mac Jones, and look, let's just do real quick lightning round. Just give me for quarterbacks, because there's a little bit of risk waiting. I guess there could be a setback in warmups, but like you said, how well is he going to play coming off the injury? Expected to start here, so I'm just going to throw Mac Jones with some other names I have around him in my rankings. All right. Chris, you just tell me Mac Jones or Matt Ryan at Tennessee.
Matt Ryan, but I think that's shaky.
Mac Jones or Daniel Jones at Jacksonville.
Mac Jones.
Yeah, I agree with that. Too. Mac Jones or Dak Prescott in his first game back against the Lions.
Give me Dak.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what the Cowboys can look like. Mac Jones or Jared Goff on the other side of that matchup.
Mac Jones.
Yeah, I mean, I think you this could give folks an idea. I mean, he's a preferred streaming option just because of how this offense has been playing. And I agree with you on Ramondre. I mean, Ramondre was coming on even with Harris on the field before Harris's injury. All right, Dave Malone asks, and then Christian McCaffrey. First Christian McCaffrey question. Sit one, Zeke, Christian McCaffrey, and he puts in parentheses package of plays, or Ramondre Stevenson. Got to sit one.
Ooh, sit one. I guess if volume of plays is a concern, then I guess CMC. I think that
it's not Zeke, right? I mean, I know for sure it's not Zeke. Zeke is playing. It's one of McCaffrey or Stevenson.
Yeah, so I think it would probably be CMC if you had to sit one, just because of the points that we just laid out for Ramondre. Like, we knew like what his role was going to be and just the projected workload, even with Harris in the lineup. Let's say if Harris has like an in-game setback or something along those lines, even though he practiced fully. I mean, we know what that offense opens up for Ramondre in that case.
My brain says Ramondre, right? Another thing I'll add, another out for a Ramondre is, well, you would think that the Patriots defense is going to really humble and educate Justin Fields on Monday night. And in the fourth quarter, that's going to be Stevenson getting those carries, not Harris. Yes. There's no reason to have Harris doing garbage time carries. Remember, Stevenson had his second touchdown in garbage time last week. But my gut, and this isn't my gut like intuition. I'm not using gut feel as a synonym for intuition. I mean like stress or indigestion. Like, I'm afraid of sitting McCaffrey. I'm afraid of sitting him. And a package of play. Come on, McCaffrey's professional.
Yeah.
Once the game starts, I don't know. So
Steven, I mean, the 49ers have already shown their hand. Like, just put him out there.
Yeah, I mean, look, the right answer or the smart answer based on any true measurables and putting in the uncertainty is Stevenson. But that being said, if you're also out there thinking like, am I really not putting a check mark beside Christian McCaffrey? I get it. And this is a good problem to have. But Zeke, I think, and I want to touch on a couple of things going back to this to put a bow on this. The Patriots, and like you mentioned, and this is important, folks, if you want to win fantasy football, things change during the season. The Patriots offense, which is a little choppy to start the season, it makes sense when you have a new offensive coordinator, new quarterback, new personnel, that maybe what we're seeing in late October is a little different than what we saw in September. Likewise, with Dallas, this one's a little more straightforward. How much was Cooper Rush holding this offense back? They were winning, and that's great, but Dak Prescott being on the field, especially against the Lions, and that may give us a little distorted view of how much better it's going to be because it is the Lions coming off a bye. So maybe they got a few things figured out on defense. Doubt it. But I think you might see Zeke, honestly, as a top 10 running back from here on out. Because it's a winning team with a quality defense, and they want to run the ball, and Zeke looked good last week. We already talked about DeAndre Swift likely being out today. Peg Burge asks, start Jamal Williams or Curtis Samuel, who gets to play with Taylor Heineke?
Curtis Samuel. I don't mind Curtis Samuel. Like, if it's in a PPR league, like I know Jamal Williams, like his projected workload, like with Swift out. I mean, but against Dallas's defense right now, if I'm remembering correctly, so far they haven't allowed a 100-yard rusher or anything along those lines like to date. So like, while the projected workload might seem fine, if it's in even like a half or like full PPR league, we have to think that Taylor Heineke doesn't have the strongest arm. And then also, again, one of those just like point shoot. Like, if the guy's open, you probably be able to matriculate the offense like down the field, like in that manner. So I know that Heineke had like the strongest rapport with with Terry McLaurin, like when they were both starting. But at the very least now, with like Curtis Samuel being like running the high percentage throws or high percentage routes, rather shorter ADOT. I mean, it does like his usage or his deployment on the field is a bit more conducive to scoring fantasy points than Terry's.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up scoring. I think in a PPR, that makes it easier to make a case for Curtis Samuel. And you laid it out well, where McLaurin is the guy based on the chemistry, what we saw. And the nice thing about Taylor Heineke for fantasy is he's just going to let it fly. He'll just let it, he's going to play with no fear. He's one of the heirs to Ryan Fitzpatrick, and that he's going to play. He's going to let it all hang out there, and that's probably a good thing against the Packers. Washington's probably going to be playing from behind, I would guess. It's the Packers. You never know.
Right.
De'Ami Brown, not healthy. Jahan Dotson, not healthy. The Cole Turner, the 5th round rookie, is their healthiest tight end right now. So you would think almost by default, maybe it's J.D. McKissick. Actually, Taylor Heineke does target J.D. McKissick a lot. So that's one of the questions we're going to answer today is who's going to be that safety valve target? Is it going to be McKissick and or Samuel? With Jamal Williams, if it's a non-PPR or 0.5 PPR, I might be a little more inclined to go with Jamal Williams and just hope for a touchdown.
Yes.
And we're going to get a question here about the Lions offense. The last time we saw them, now, granted, they were very shorthanded, although not exactly all hands on deck right now. Bill Belichick really humbled Jared Goff again. So you might see Jamal Williams post one of those like 18 for 57 and a catch for 5 yards kind of lines. And if you like the Dallas defense to really frustrate Detroit, that's also part of this. So I think it comes down to scoring system. PPR go with Samuel, 0.5 PPR. I might go with the running back. One other player that I'm glad we're getting a question in right off the bat here, Grant Ebert. Standard scoring, so non-PPR, but it gives us a chance to talk about Najee Harris, gives us a chance to talk about Raheem Mostert and Keenan Allen, who it seems like the more we learn, the more you might think that he's not going to play, or if he does play, he might be limited. Remember, this was the guy who told us to put him in, and then I think didn't play with a hamstring last year.
Yeah,
so
I remember that.
This is tough. And Najee Harris tonight against Miami, against Raheem Mostert's Dolphins.
I lean more towards Najee Harris than anything else. I mean, because I think that you laid out the points well, like for Keenan Allen. What he openly said that he was looking towards the fact that
they're like, oh, what about week 8? Yeah, maybe that might be better. Yeah, week 8.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like they've kind of given us all the breadcrumbs to lead us to the point where he's not going to play today. So I think the only piece of information that I saw that might have left the door open for it was that he was available for the Friday walkthrough, and like he hasn't done that for the past couple of weeks. And other than that, that's it. Like everything else that we've heard, everything else that we've read, everything else the team has let out just kind of points us in the direction he's not going to play. So I would take him down a notch. But Najee, like so far, like with his workload, even after the fact that Coach Tomlin came out and said that we were going to see more Jaylen Warren. Najee Harris has been fine, like so far, and I think comparing the two defensive matchups that they've got going forward, like Raheem Mostert, like going up against Pittsburgh's defense right now, they're 13th in rushing EPA allowed so far. So I just think that overall, from a workload perspective, like Najee provides at least the best floor in a standard scoring league.
Yeah, I think so. Just with Harris, you just hope you get that touchdown. And Kenny Pickett should make it a game offense. We'll see how Mostert does with Tua Tagovailoa back tonight. I'd go with Najee Harris and hope for the best there. Another data point on Jamal Williams, and we bring Travis Etienne into the chat, and Derryberry, 0.5 PPR, Jamal Williams. You don't have to worry about if it's Jamal or Javonte, sorry, Denver fans, or Travis Etienne.
Etienne for me.
Yeah,
I'm betting on Travis Etienne, not to just have not have an explosive day or anything like that, but at the very least be able to separate like from James Robinson in a meaningful way at this point, so we know where things are gonna go in the future. As of right now, I think through 6 weeks of play, so Jacksonville has just like I think they're like 8th, or no, they're 12th rather, in terms of explosive run rate. And they're tied with like Minnesota, Tampa Bay, Seattle, and I think in Dallas, where like every other one of those teams, like they at least have passing games. They have passing offenses that can kind of supplement or complement like that rushing, the rushing production. Jacksonville doesn't have that at this point. It's like Christian Kirk and nobody else, unless you have some faith in Zay Jones. So right now, like Travis Etienne, like having the most juice between him and James Robinson. It's just, I'm hoping that the team sees that. The team recognizes the fact that they need some more to be able to generate some more explosives. And Etienne is the only other one, like besides Christian Kirk, that can probably provide that, because it ain't going to be Jamal Agnew. So it's just,
he's hurt.
Yeah. For me, it's just, I think Travis Etienne, like his workload starts to pick up and they see that what he can do on the field once they get the ball in his hands.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think your analysis is spot on, where if we're using rational coaching as an assumption here, ETN is what they need to jumpstart the offense. And this is another good moment to point out in fantasy football. If you took ETN in the 4th or 5th round, maybe the 3rd round even, and because he's just going to provide so much more juice than James Robinson, even though James Robinson has surprised us with his performance back from an Achilles, like 9 months removed, 10 months removed. Sure enough, it seems like that's going to be the answer. And sometimes it's just, again, if you're patient, maybe, yeah, again, I like to say you can be right and wrong. You can even be right for the reasons that you thought and wrong in the same season, sometimes in the same game. All right. So yeah, I think ETN is a player who's trending up for sure. And here's some riddling backfields or offenses. Tony 42K, and I'm glad we're at least going to get to touch on the Ravens backfield. Brian Robinson or Kenyon Drake. And Gus Edwards was activated from the PUP list yesterday.
I was gonna say, if you had asked me this like maybe like 12 hours ago or something like that, I would have been like Kenyon Drake, like without too much of a hesitation. I think I still lean more towards Kenyon Drake, just at the very least, because if he's been the more productive of the running backs like so far, despite the fact they wanted to give Justice Hill like more of a workload, like when he was still active and healthy. At the very least, we should be able to get more shots on goal, like from Lamar Jackson.
Yeah,
I mean, he'll be the engine that at least puts them in scoring position. And for a running back standpoint, that's what you want. Like you want to be able to be a guy or have a guy on your roster that's going to be having those touches within the red zone. And so I can't really say that like with Tyler Heineke and the Commanders at this point, going up against even like Green Bay's defense is in disarray, to put it kindly. I still think that at the very least, like Lamar Jackson should be able to put him in scoring position. Kenyon Drake has been on the field in the red zone. So at least it's more conducive for Kenyon Drake like to be scoring points than Brian Robinson's workload.
Yeah, I think that it's more of a chip on the offense than anything else. And it's a chip on the Ravens offense against a Browns defense that looked atrocious last week. Now, again, it was the Patriots. We're going to tease apart how much of that was just the Patriots are going to make defenses look bad because of the conflict they put them in. With Brian Robinson, I just think the problem is he's not. I love the story, but he's not showing that he's going to add value to his touches. He's going to get the value that's there. I'm not sure what's going to be there in this Washington offense. I'm not sure if they're going to be playing, hanging in this game long enough to get him up to 15, 17, 18 carries. And Drake looked good last week. And if this question was Brian Robinson or Justice Hill, I'd probably say Justice Hill for the same reason we're saying Kenyon Drake. I think you're going to see, like you mentioned, Lamar Jackson a couple of times in that answer, that because of Lamar Jackson, things are going to start opening up in the running game for this team. And we saw Drake with that 100-yard game last week. So on the subject of Brian Robinson, news this morning coming out from Ian Rappaport that Isaiah Pacheco, impressing the Chiefs, he's going to start today. Now, that could be just a ceremonial start. You may still see something like the ugly 40-40-20 type split, and maybe he gets 40 and McKinnon or Edwards-Helaire goes down to 20. It's against San Francisco. So first of all, I'll just ask you this, because was I too aggressive? Someone said, should I drop Brian Robinson for Pacheco? I said, yeah, because the Kansas City offense is much more likely to produce a player that's going to change your fantasy destiny than Washington.
That's exactly it. Yeah. I mean, do you want to continue to roster players on a team that's back half of the league and like yards per drive, points per drive? I mean, like all the things that we want like for fantasy production, or do you want a running back that's attached to Patrick Mahomes?
Right.
The answer, I mean, it kind of answers itself right there.
Someone even asked, because it was a scramble, right? Someone said, thank God for dad schedules that, all of us waking up because it's normally time to like get the kids up for school, right. To learn this morning at about, I think 7:30 Eastern or so that Pacheco was going to start. Someone even said Isaiah Pacheco or James Robinson. I was like, I'm not going to tell you not to do it. I'm not going to say that's too far, because again, but then let's get it back to this week, because Cleveland Standards asks, flexing in a PPR, Isaiah Pacheco, Cortland Sutton. Oh my! We're right back where we started with Cortland Sutton last year, aren't we?
Yeah.
And or George Pickens with his buddy Kenny Pickett.
Actually, I lean Pickens in this group. Yeah, just looking at because like Brett Rippon and just like the Broncos offense in general. I mean, Cortland Sutton will probably have to go up against Sauce Gardner quite often today. So no, I'm not really all that enthusiastic about the offense or their defensive matchup. No, Pickens right now. I mean, Miami's corners have been banged up over the past couple of weeks, even though I think they're supposed to get at least one of them back this week, if I'm remembering correctly. But no, given the rapport that Pickens and Pickett have together, even with Isaiah Pacheco starting, I think it's Pickens for me, just given the workload in a PPR setting.
Yeah, and if that other option wasn't as attractive as Pickens, then we might be saying, hey, give Pacheco a whirl. If it was just Pacheco or Sutton, I'd say give Pacheco a whirl because Cortland Sutton with Brett Rippon starting, it's going to be miserable for Denton. Pick up the Jets defense. But you're picking up Pacheco for the possibility of someone who can capture, say, 60% of the workload and production in the Kansas City backfield down the line. Maybe not this week against San Francisco. We'll see. But he is, as I like to say, a what the heck flex. Scott Hofer, we've talked about at least one of these players already. Need to play 2 and drop 1. And we talked about Curtis Samuel. It's a 0.5 PPR. We talked about Curtis Samuel. He's one we're going to play.
Yep.
And then we need to play 1 and drop 1 out of Hunter Renfrow, Darnell Mooney, and Brandon Cooks.
I have no problems with playing Brandon Cooks this week. I'd prefer if they were at home. But as of right now, I believe the Raiders, they're 32nd in adjusted fantasy points allowed to wide receivers, even though they're coming off a bye. Well, I mean, both teams are coming off of a bye. But still, I mean, I do think that with the projected workload, with him, because I think even Nico Collins was coming with a wrist and Achilles injury, he was battling through throughout most of this week. So, I mean, Cooks is really just one of their primary options already, if not the only option, just given health status. I would play those two in terms of dropping either Renfrow or Mooney. I can understand dropping Mooney, especially with the way that Belichick gushed over the entire Chicago offense this week. They're not
7 minutes.
They're not scoring a point this week. I think Ben Solak, I think he had the right point. He's just they're not scoring a single point on Monday night. There ain't no way.
Yeah, I think that's good. I probably playing Cooks this week is fine. Like you said, the game script, the matchup should be good. I'm fine with dropping Renfrow. I really think that we're looking at this offense now for the Raiders as Devontae Adams and Josh Jacobs, and maybe there's room for one other player to be relevant this week and going forward. Maybe that's Foster Moreau. I don't even know.
Yeah.
But with Mooney, it's not going to be this week for Mooney, but still, he was starting to trend up. And this is another one of those offenses, not this week, but going forward. The Bears could at least not be the corpse you're poking with the stick saying, do something. They actually were at the goal line 3 times against the Commanders, just couldn't finish. So they were moving the ball. So against defenses on the level of the Commanders, and granted, Commanders are one of the bottom 3rd defenses in the league, still there's something there. Okay, moving along, and I'm glad, again, I like to, whenever you folks do us right by asking questions about some players that we want to talk about. Still starting Sutton. We're coming back around to that. But Rob Monticelli, what's up, Rob? One wide receiver and one flex. Cortland Sutton. I'm gonna put a line right through that. Right, get your red pen out there. Alec Pierce, Curtis Samuel, who we talked about, Rashad Bateman, assuming he plays, AJ Dillon, who, speaking again, do something, and Wan'Dale Robinson. He had 3 for 37 and a touchdown on 15 snaps last week. We need a wide receiver and a flex, and it's not going to be Cortland Sutton.
Yes, not going to be Cortland Sutton. I don't mind Alec Pierce here, but it's just that with Michael Pittman moving more into that slasher role last week, do you see him crossing routes, middle of the field targets that he had last week, the way that he should be utilized, with the way that a la Matt Harmon, screaming from the rooftops. That's how Michael Pittman should be used. But I think if I'm looking at this right, I mean, if let's say Rashad Bateman's still kind of banged up,
right?
I don't mind Wan'Dale Robinson in this matchup, going because if we looked at how he was utilized on the field, like you mentioned, 15 snaps, but it's just the targets he was able to garner on such a small workload, and with how Brian Daboll has been just so willing to be as creative as all get out in order to get some of these guys open, and just essentially just I don't know, completely dumbfound opposing defense, because just I don't know how we're supposed to I don't know how we're supposed to guard any of these plays or formations that these teams are putting out. So I don't mind Wan'Dale Robinson right there, but I would say that it's either between Bateman or Robinson for me. I lean Bateman just because of Lamar Jackson, but if you wanted to go Wan'Dale Robinson, I understand.
Yeah, that almost applies to every one of these plays, right? Like I'm not
Mhm.
going to talk you out any of these guys. Pierce going up against Tennessee. Samuel, we talked about his outlook. Dylan, Bateman, we know can make your week in one play, and Wandale Robinson. But I think Curtis Samuel gives us that high floor. And
Mhm.
I'm still inclined to go with Dylan, but I'm probably living in the past, thinking that this is going to be that two-back backfield where they rack up 35 touches and 2 or 3 total touchdowns between him and Aaron Jones. Wandale Robinson can make a good case for it. And I'll add one more thing you said. Michael Pittman on those crossing routes, right? Who did they play last week? Jacksonville. Wandale Robinson.
Mhm.
What's a good way to use Wandale Robinson? Get it
Hey, there we
crossing
go.
routes. Who
Mhm.
the Giants playing? Jacksonville. So, if I could get just access to a number, like how many snaps is Wandale Robinson going to play? If he's up to 45 or 50 snaps today,
Hey.
because you can see that there's just this gaping maw vacuum for targets. Someone's got to fill it for the Giants. It
Mhm.
could be Robinson. I would go Samuel and Dylan, but Rob, trust your gut here. Jimmy Evans asked Pickens or Dobbs is Pickens.
Yeah.
This one's tough. This is what happens when you go heavy on wide receiver early and you nail all the picks. Okay,
Mhm.
Mike Mitchell, Godwin, Amon Ross on God, Debo Samuel, or Chase, and he has to sit one.
Oh my gosh. Sit the one that has health concerns and sit St. Brown. I guess if
Right?
I had to,
It's not
if I had
Debo
to,
or Chase. I'm
yeah.
terrified of putting either one of those guys on my bench.
And I can't imagine like sitting Godwin at this point, just looking at like how many targets he got last week
Right.
and going up against the Panthers right now, who are completely like bereft of talent at this point. Well, on the offensive side, it's just like DJ Moore, like
Yeah.
just like kind of
Or
stuck.
DJ Moore, you really feel
Yeah,
sorry for him.
like he is like the meme of like Will Smith at the end of Fresh Prince, just like standing there in the empty living room, just kind of looking around because like there's nobody left. Like
Yeah.
I'm just here by
I'm
myself.
by myself
Like
now. Yeah.
and that's it. So no, I would say the only discriminator like across like those four wide receivers is St. Brown is the one that comes in with the most health concerns. So if I had to pick one, I'd just go Godwin, Debo, and Chase.
Yeah, I think that's a fair. If I was going to make a devil's advocate for St. Brown over Godwin, it's just the weekly ceiling that's been demonstrated. St. Brown's has been higher, but
It's
that was a
fair.
healthy St.
Mm,
Brown. Godwin's a safe play here, so I think that's
mm,
probably the right way to go. That's the smart angle here. Um, these are fun. I like sometimes some of your most glorious fantasy football victories are when you have to make a desperation play and you pick the right play and it gets you
mhm.
over the top. John Thompson, bye week hell. Noah Brown against the Lions, Zay Jones against the Giants, or Damian Harris back on the field tomorrow night against the Bears.
Zay Jones.
Yes,
Actually, I don't
yes,
mind Zay
yes.
Jones. Like what most receptions on like of all pass catchers like on the Jaguars like through 6 weeks. So yeah, I don't mind like Zay Jones at this point. I know that you could argue that he's not as talented as other wide receivers, yada 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 yada. But no, he's been productive like on the touches that he's been given so far, like in Jacksonville. And if we were just talking about the lack of playmakers that are at the like for Trevor Lawrence, Zay Jones against this Giants defense, it's definitely possible. I'd prefer Noah Brown if like we didn't have this. I don't know. It's somewhere between like him and like Michael Gallup are kind of cannibalizing each other right
Mm-hmm.
now, and we'll see how things change with Dak Prescott coming back. But out of that group, I kind of like Jones the most.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That name stood out, especially in a PPR as the Jags face Tennessee. The second rematch.
Mm-hmm.
Jags making all those division games, get them out of the way. A big one in that division. Uh, Darren Danker. Now we get to talk the other side of the San Francisco
Mm-hmm.
backfield. Morning, Darren. Two of Jeff Wilson, DJ Moore, again, poor DJ Moore, Justice Hill. I always think of those, wasn't it? The drug kingpin down in Colombia, hanging out by himself. My brain. Uh,
Pablo.
Pablo Escobar, yes. The two Escobars, excellent. Probably the best, maybe the best 30 for 30. One of the top five for sure, the
Mm-hmm.
two Escobars. Jeff Wilson, DJ Moore, doing the Pablo Escobar, hanging out by himself, lonely. Justice Hill and Isaiah Pacheco in a half PPR. Ooh, not easy.
No, not easy. I would say I definitely I'm with Pacheco like on that one. I
Yeah.
have no problems with that one. I don't mind starting Jeff Wilson this week. And just because from a play volume standpoint, we can at least see Kansas City pushing San Francisco into overdrive mode, because they're, with as many injuries and defensive issues that we've seen San Francisco have over the past couple of weeks, where like Atlanta ran all over them. They were able to expose like San Francisco's defense, and I think that, I mean, if there's anybody that you don't want to show weaknesses against, is when you're about to face Patrick Mahomes. So in that sense, it could push like San Francisco like into just not being able to sit on their laurels and being able to like completely just run out the clock. So that could provide like some more touches like Jeff Wilson's way if Christian McCaffrey is still trying to understand or get a better handle like of the playbook. So I wouldn't mind Jeff Wilson just given the matchup. Kansas City's defense, the run defense hasn't been great. Should be a good day for the linebacker Nick Bolton for the Chiefs, if I'm remembering correctly.
Willie Gay is back too.
Willie Gay is back as well. So I mean, a big test like for the Chiefs like linebacking group, but Jeff Wilson wouldn't be a bad start this week. I mean, but I could also see a case for Justice Hill, since we already outlined like Baltimore's rushing attack.
Yeah, again, with Pacheco, with any Ravens running back, you know, we're just going on feel here. And we're just trying to get some touches. We know we're going to get that with both of those guys. That San Francisco Kansas City matchup, again, I don't know why I actually preemptively dropped Jeff Wilson in a few leagues. Maybe I was a little hasty to do that, but I just every time I meditate and think on that San Francisco backfield, I just think, oh, once, like, how are you gonna keep him down on the farm? Once you see what Christian McCaffrey can do, like, just a handful of plays. Yeah, right. All right. I'm going to try to make sure that we could touch on any other players. Because we've answered all the questions for the very eager and wonderful people who come before we start this. And here's something we haven't talked about. Rumple Stumskin. Start Tony Pollard or Pacheco. So let's talk about Tony Pollard. We talked about how much we like Ezekiel Elliott in the offense with Dak Prescott. What about Tony Pollard? Does that bump him over speculative plays like Pacheco?
Not for me. It's very difficult to trust like what that workload is going to be, because we can't even bank on Tony Pollard getting some work like through the passing game at this point. And if we're already somewhat a bit more confident in what Zeke is capable of doing in this game, at least from a projected workload standpoint, like once they even get into the red zone, can we expect like Tony Pollard to be able to like garner a few touches here and there? We just haven't seen it yet. So at least I'd rather roll on the upside of what Pacheco can provide, especially being attached to the Mahomes-led offense, like versus whatever Dak is going to look like in his return, and then also Pollard trying to at least again squeeze out a few more touches like in that Dallas backfield. I think Pacheco's the better choice here.
It's Pacheco's the classic fun play. I wish it wasn't San Francisco getting Nick Bosa back, but Pacheco is that classic really fun play. And well, we'll see. I do like Pollard. I mean, look, I'll say this, and I always hate it whenever we say, well, we recommend one recommends one of us recommends the other. But I will say this with Pollard. I'm excited about this Cowboys offense. I'm excited about the new potentials. We're going to learn, especially against Detroit, we're going to learn about the ceilings. And with Pollard, talk about this, it's always on the couch, Chris, in terms of emotions. And I do have that fear of seeing the game break. Oh, there goes Tony Pollard for a 50-yard touchdown.
Yes.
But likewise, we could see that first drive in the Super Bowl rematch, Kansas City and San Francisco. Pacheco has 5 carries for 35 yards and a touchdown, and he's off, and he ends up with, they reestablished the running game in this one. So both of these players give you that fear of missing out, which means hopefully you have both on your roster. Okay. Let's see, what else do we have here? We already mentioned Tyquan Thornton. Look, this is a real quick for Matt Morgan. This is, I think, just how much things have changed because of how much things have changed for Jacksonville. If you're looking at a flex, Robinson or Tyquan Thornton, James Robinson, that is, I have to stop and I have to think about it. And the more I think about it, I don't have a lot of faith in Jacksonville. James Robinson has been so pedestrian. I'm probably going Tyquan Thornton here. It is a PPR he mentions in the next post there.
Yeah, that's where I was going to lean to. Like Tyquan Thornton, like his name immediately stuck out. Like the moment I saw it, because if you are swinging for upside, like with the flex position, and we've seen like what even just like in a limited sample size, and I get it. And this might be a slightly different offense now with Mac Jones coming back, but I do think this is one that's an offense that should be able to impose their will on Chicago's defense. And I think Tyquan Thornton now, like with his ability to garner a few more targets like in there and also be able to create like a few more explosives too, like as we saw last week. Now I think Thornton's like the better option between him or James Robinson.
Yeah, I just what there are certain players or teams or situations, and it's sometimes difficult to separate this because when are we going to feel good about starting James Robinson again? When are we going to feel good about the Jaguars again?
Mhm.
And there are certain players that, again, we laid out. If you had to drop James Robinson for Isaiah Pacheco, we're not going to say, well, it's too far. You've gone too far because James Robinson is one of those players now I think that's on your bench until he gives you reason to play him, until you have that regret, because Jacksonville does get their offense back on track. And even in that case, well, who are they playing the next week? Is it going to be similar, the matchup? So it's going to be
Right.
really tough to get that confidence back. And that's why James Robinson is not someone we're that attached to, and certainly not that attached to like Kevin Trinkle asked Thornton or Sutton. I mean, it's like, and look, watch Cortland Sutton catch 2 long touchdowns from
Right.
Brett Rippon
Yeah.
today. But I think that's one of those things. Kevin Trinkle also asked real quick, drop Latavius Murray for Justice Hill. I think that's a yes.
That's fine. Yeah. I have no problem with that.
And again, folks, sometimes whenever these questions come up and you're unclear, I would say one of the things that guide you is, which offense do you want to be attached to? You want to be attached to the Baltimore offense or the Denver offense in the 3-headed backfields? Okay, we've talked about. I'm just trying to find a few more questions before we sign off here of some questions of some players that we haven't mentioned yet. Let's see. Okay, Ronald Mikos, Brandon Ayuk or Alec Pierce?
Ayuk for me.
He's done enough, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and also even with Christian McCaffrey in tow, there's so many possibilities for the San Francisco-Kansas City game. But what did we see last week for San Francisco? Now, granted, Christian McCaffrey will change his complexion, but because San Francisco was playing from behind, you saw Jimmy Garoppolo throwing the ball more. If Kansas City can have some success, remember San Francisco still has a banged-up secondary. They are getting Nick Bosa back, but if Kansas City can have success on offense in this game and you get Garoppolo throwing more, we've seen what Brandon Ayuk can do. It's just a question of game script and volume. And at the other end of the spectrum, if Christian McCaffrey really illuminates the running game here, then that can make everything open up. Then we can get back to that dream scenario we had with Trey Lance, where you think, well, the defense is so stressed out, everything's going to work. And all of these players, even on limited volume, can still have high efficiency and hit their ceilings. Brandon Ayuk, I think, is someone. Alec Pierce has been very consistent for us, showing up in the box score even on 50-60% of snaps. If he can continue to step up his participation, then we might be looking at him as an every week start. But I think it is Ayuk for sure.
My only concern with the Colts offense is just last week, Matt Ryan dropped back 50. I mean, he had
58
58
times. Yeah.
He hasn't thrown that many pass attempts since like 2013. So it's like, how can we really expect the same type of like overall volume for the Colts passing game? Whereas Brandon Ayuk, run the most routes of any pass catcher like in San Francisco over the past couple of weeks. I mean, second in targets just behind Deebo Samuel, like we expected it to be. It's an easier sell for me, like for Brandon Ayuk to continue getting targets, where the Colts offense, I don't know what to make of them at this point.
Yeah, I don't know if I got my NFC West matchups mixed up. Alec Pierce is playing the Titans, not the Jags. Jags are playing the Giants. But I think you're right that bottom line participation expectations are higher for Ayuk, and with Jonathan Taylor back this week, Ryan's not going to throw the ball 58 times. Gotten a few questions. Mentioned, let's get Kareem Hunt in here, and Kareem Hunt is another guy. Now, you do have Deshaun Watson coming back in week 13. But again, if someone said, well, the only player, and really quick, I want to mention this. So if someone's asking me, well, the only player I could drop to get Isaiah Pacheco is Kareem Hunt, then that tells me that the waiver wire is probably pretty fat and there's a lot of possibilities. So I'm not that scared of dropping Hunt. Even when Nick Chubb got hurt last year, I think Hunt was actually better when Chubb was out there. Maybe that was 2 years ago. So Kareem Hunt, especially against Baltimore, we saw Jacoby Brissett turning back into a pumpkin basically last week against New England. So I haven't gotten a Kareem Hunt question in, but I just wanted to touch on again how his outlook is dim, and is it dim enough to start Isaiah Pacheco or Kenyon Drake? And I don't know if we've had Pacheco versus Drake. So one in a 0.5 PPR for Captain Crunk, Isaiah Pacheco, Kareem Hunt, or Kenyon Drake.
I think in this case, I think it would be Kenyon Drake for me, just because we do know that with Isaiah Pacheco is getting the start, but it's not like CEH is going to be inactive. Jerick McKinnon is going to be active. But at least with Drake, he comes in with the least amount of injury concerns, like out of his backfield mates. And like I think you laid out the points well, like for Kareem Hunt, and just that we know that Nick Chubb is probably going to be the one to like essentially, keep Cleveland's offense like on track, like with Jacoby Brissett, like having some more problems. So I think out of that group, I lean more towards Drake.
It's fun to get attached to the Baltimore offense today. This is another good when in doubt. They're playing Cleveland. Cleveland's defense was so bad last week, and maybe that's just the brilliance of the Judge Patricia offense. But I think Denzel Ward is maybe still going to be out there, and I would expect Baltimore to have a lot of success. I hope that everybody out there has a lot of success. Certainly our Sundays start off successfully just because we get to hang out with each other, with all of you wonderful people in the chat room. Love the turnout, love the support of football guys, love the support of the fantasy football community. And it's another Sunday where we're going to try to enjoy and adjust to everything. Maybe some of us might have some brain cells over there on the baseball front. I saw a Barry Larkin throwback jersey
Oh,
the
wow.
other day. I know, man. That's good. It's good stuff. And we were also talking about Eric Davis. So, Cincinnati in the house, NFL in the house, MLB, football guys, our great community. Thank you, folks, always for everything you do to support and encourage us. And we want to continue to provide you the best because you're so classy.